All right. Welcome. What the fuck happened to my background? Motherfucker. Whatever, let's leave that one. Welcome to the show, everybody. This is not Strange Juan's, not today. Juan has had another child. He's dealing with a baby coming out of the womb, a little wee Bobby. And so Strange Juan's will essentially be put on pause for maybe a little over a month, just so he can settle in his life with. He already has a kid. I think his kid is like um four or five, his first kid. So now he's just had another kid, and so I want him to be able to settle in and enjoy his time with his significant other and everything. And obviously having a baby, especially a newborn, is a lot of responsibility and a lot of late nights, just constant crying. So we wanted to cover the hauntings of Ontario, specifically because we just did the hauntings of Florida, and we're doing a lot of new work and starting to talk to different podcasters. And this is something I was really excited about doing. We have Aran from First Class Horror. What's up, homie?
What's going on? Thanks for having me. I'm actually like super excited about doing this. I've always been a fan of um paranormal, true crime, all that kind. Actually, in the last couple of years, probably since this whole pandemic thing, I've kind of went on a complete like just like true crime.
Yeah,
And I think from talking to you guys recently, I've started to kind of come back to some of the other weird shit that I used to love. Like the paranormal things, all these
yeah.
cryptids and researching some of this stuff has actually been like I think it's like rekindled my love for that even more.
It's so good. Like I've always been into that stuff. Like I have my Ouija board over there from when me and Billy did the Black Eyed Children episode, and it's just something like we always try to revisit everything. Recently, we've been getting into a lot of true crime, and I've like even said to Anton, we got to pull it back, get back into some aliens because we try to
Mm.
have it versatile for fans to have a little bit of everything strange. We don't want to stick to anything specifically, right? So I thought hauntings are always so fun, and like you don't really know if it's completely true or if it's half true or who really knows. And having my own experiences, as we talked when we were on your show, I've had a lot of weird experiences, Ouija boards, ghosts, shadow people. So to talk about the stuff, it's like, well, I've seen weird shit. I would like to believe that there is some weird stuff out there.
Yeah, and I feel
Yeah.
like I just don't believe that it's complete coincidence that there's so many stories and so many different. I mean, like no matter where you go in the world, I can
Yeah.
guarantee if you find some like weird like back ass town in the middle of like the Middle East, there's surely some sort of a paranormal, a haunting, a creature or something. I just don't think there's that many stories with no basis.
No, that's what I'm always the person, right? I've said this before, is that like because I've had my own experiences, that I tend to believe people that obviously don't sound like a crazy backwoods farmer getting abducted by aliens. I always joke about that, like a guy named Jed, right? So I'm Jed, I'm from the farm and I got abducted by aliens. And it's just like those guys, I feel like aliens abduct people that are probably not going to be believed, so it does make sense. But like
Mhm.
I've had my own experiences, so it just make like I tend to believe people if they sound pretty genuine, that okay, like maybe they did see some weird stuff, or like something was happening. And there's a lot of weird strange cases out there, and I bet you Ireland is rife with that shit.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. I think I at one point I'd become so obsessed with how many cases there are here that I
Oh, I can
forgot that
imagine.
everywhere else has this a similar thing. And from researching some of the things that you had sent me, and then I started to come across other cases
There's
that were
so
like,
many, man.
and
It's
I was like,
fucking crazy.
Jesus Christ, I actually had no idea that it was that rich with like all these different
There's
stories.
so many haunted places in Ontario. Even I had to cut them down because like this is really interesting, but I was like, no, I gotta get this. I like there's so many,
Hmm.
which we might recover down the road is more hauntings. Eventually probably have you on for a haunting episode of Ireland, because I'm sure it could. And the thing is, right, people that are listening, if we really dived into the many hauntings of Ontario, we could be here for fucking 6 hours. There's a lot. And same with Ireland. I would think Ireland would have even more. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, yeah, I would say that, but
your history is older. You've been
yeah, but
around longer.
Yeah, I feel like that the only thing is, at least with over here, because it is so much older,
Yeah.
and the history, with a lot of the stories, it's such a long time ago that I think now when people talk about it, it just seems like some like weird ass, like, oh, it's like some old folk tale, so no one really cares. Whereas maybe it's just because you guys, actually talk about this stuff, and I find that there's a lot more, you can find out a lot more about some of the stuff that's,
Do
even
you
in
think
the
there's a
whole.
stigmatism there? Like people don't like talking about the history and the folklore?
And I had this conversation with somebody yesterday, and they brought up a point that I never thought of, with the fact that, how religious Ireland had been, up until maybe the last 20, 30 years.
Superstition. Yeah.
Yeah, and part of me wonders, like, a lot of that stuff was, like, I think, just pushed aside, and like, no, we don't talk about that. You go to church every Sunday,
Yeah.
you do this, you do that, and
You don't involve yourself with the devil because a lot of those ghostly and paranormal experiences, people do believe that it's obviously religious people, they contribute to the devil being involved and stuff like that
Mhm.
too. And it is like I'm up, I'm having coffee because it is 11:20 a.m. my time and 4:20 your time. Smoke
On
up,
Friday the
everybody.
13th.
Yeah, and it's Friday the 13th. I was gonna ask you too. Billy had a question. Billy is convinced Ireland like doesn't have black people. And I was like, I'm pretty sure it does. I was like, everywhere is black people. I was like, they got left everywhere after the slave trade. But
We probably have more uh other cultures and people from other countries than we do Irish people at this point.
really? Yeah, I
Yeah,
knew Billy was
we're
fucking
like the
wrong.
minority.
Yeah, well, obviously immigrants coming in and refugees amongst other things that you know, I was like, I'm not gonna get too deep into that shit, but it does cause problems. And in my own opinion, I think we should fix these countries and the way that they run things and the dictatorships and blah 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 blah. And even the Ukraine, it's like, oh, let's just bring them over here. How about we fix the country that is rife with child trafficking and money laundering and biotech weapons labs? Let's fix these countries so everyone can live in peace instead of crowding certain places,
Mhm.
funneling money to refugees. Well, like even Canadian citizens can't really make enough. The gas has gone through the roof, groceries, everything's expensive. They're supposed to be getting a food shortage, and that's a conspiracy for everybody. Conspiracy quotations are truth, but that'll be another episode.
And on the topic of Ukraine, currently we have this huge issue here where, we opened up the borders to Ukrainian refugees, women and children mainly,
Yeah,
and a couple of notorious reporters who, I guess, they don't do your average reporting. They show up to places in the middle of the night and they do all this shit. One guy actually showed up to one of these buildings where they were like processing all these people,
yeah,
and he found out that majority of them showed up with no papers and no sort of anything, and there was like shitloads of men and dudes and teenagers and boys, and he tried to question the people that were like bringing them in about,
yeah,
like, what's the fucking story with this, and they were just like, yeah, no, we don't talk about it, don't, just has nothing to do with it, it's fine, it's cool. While there's, I think, 11,000 people now. That doesn't sound like a huge number, but
yeah,
when you live on a small island like we do, and like the population is not that big, we've 11,000, I think, Irish families that are currently homeless
yeah.
and can't be housed at all. But all these refugees all get
Yeah,
houses and all get
and
everything.
it doesn't make sense. I have a buddy, just to get in this very quickly. I have a buddy, he's Romanian, and he brought his he went back to Romania, met a woman, brought her over. She's Italian, and I think Romanian too. And he's fucking furious. He's so mad about this shit because Romania is very close to Ukraine. And he was like, he pays thousands of dollars in lawyer fees and all the things he has to do in the due processing to make sure everything's legitimate so she can be brought over here so she can work and have health care. And the thing is, but yet they're bringing in all these refugees, and it happened during Syria too, pretty much for free, giving them
Mhm.
houses. This happens all the time, even with people from the Middle East and stuff like that. They bring over, and because they'll vote for Trudeau, they'll give them fucking down payments for cars, for houses. And then it's like Canadian citizens that live their entire lives here to get fucking shafted. It is fucked. I think the world is fucked up. Let's have some fun with some hauntings of Ontario, though.
Because I'm going to go off on a tangent if
I
not.
know, me too, me too. But I think we should do that. Like, just shout it out. Honestly, we're gonna have Aaron on for like Patreon episodes. Especially, I want to get more into doing Stranger Danger episodes, which are rant episodes. I've talked about this with Billy and Anton, and it will be fun to have some different guests on for that, where it's free
Like that.
reign, and then we're able to get to know each other more and more. I have my weed pen in case I need it. I don't know if I do. It's pretty early. Um, but I still like to smoke up. I was debating on drinking, but I was like, it's too early. It's like it's
Yeah,
5 o'clock
11 a.m.
somewhere. So Ontario is full of terrifying ghost stories, real life hauntings, and strange events that could make the Conjuring film seem like child's play. Quotations.
Nice. I like that.
Let us make you feel those goosebumps rise up your spine. Explore these haunted prisons, scary tunnels with screaming ghosts, and strange historical buildings as we explore the hauntings of Ontario. It's gonna be fun. There's a lot of weird shit, and I'm excited to get into this, and I'm excited to cement a relationship with us as podcasters going forward. Because for all the fans, there'll be a lot of stuff that we can eventually dive into on the show too. And maybe you can we'll get Billy on if he can get a fucking better schedule going, and then he can ask you how many black people you guys have in Ireland. You have to. I think it's on the. I don't know if it's on or if it was beforehand, but I think it's on the Black Eyed Children episode. I'm pretty sure, or it's just like at the beginning when we were just talking. I can't remember.
I I was gonna say something, but it'd be seen as like way too controversial.
We don't give a fuck on Strange Brewer. Literally, our whole thing is if you're offended, you should probably turn it off.
The first time you said that about how many black people do you have there, or you have no black people, I was gonna say too many.
It's okay to say that shit. Sometimes you gotta explore the truth. You know what? I've always said, I was saying to someone at work, I was like, white people won't exist in 50 years. It just will this be phased out. It's like everyone will just have multicultural babies and stuff like that. And my buddies, you know what? I have family that's Jamaican, so I can say this shit. I don't give a fuck. I have a buddy that's a white dude, my buddy Jordan, and he's marrying a Jamaican woman. I'm like, you're splitting up the tribe, bro. I was like, you got to keep with your clan, and I was like, just joking about it. And he was like, that sounds racist, and I was like, I'm fucking kidding, man. It is a joke, and he knew I was kidding around, but it's just it's all fun. There is literally like my cousins from Toronto, a lot of obviously multiculturalism there. And if he when he's like trying to like he dated an Asian girl, and I think she was Japanese, I think. And like she had to tell her family they were just friends because they don't like them dating outside of
Mm,
their culture. It happens all the fucking time. When white people do it, we're fucking bad. Listen to Tom McDonald. He explains it very well.
you're right there though. Like even like I've got a kid, and the chick I had him with, like she's from the Czech Republic, and so many people I know are from like it's like not even a thing anymore. It's like the fucking hills have eyes.
It's so true. So let's talk about the old Ottawa jail. The Nicholas Saint Jail, also known as the Carlton Jail, was opened in 75 Nicholas Street, right beside the courthouse in 1862. The jail inflicted inhumane conditions on prisoners, including forcing 150 prisoners into 60 small cells. Yeah. So if you split that number, it's about two prisoners or two or three prisoners into a cell. But you sometimes you would have maybe the more dangerous two guys hanging out, but then it's like the ones that are not as dangerous. Maybe there's like five of them in a cell, which would be pretty bad living conditions.
Yeah, and I don't. I'm assuming it probably happened at times as well. The idea of maybe going in there for like I don't know, like pissing on the sidewalk or something,
Yeah.
and then you end up in there with like some like lunatic child rape and
Yeah.
murder.
Albert Fish lookalike.
Yeah, like that. The idea of that man always scares the shit out of me. I'm like, what would I ever do if I got like arrested for some stupid shit and somehow got caught up in some bullshit?
Oh yeah, it could happen, right? So the prisoners included men, women, and children. and could range from murderers to the mentally ill to those arrested for drunken and disorderly conduct. So literally exactly what you said, where you could just be housed with pedophiles and children supposedly went inside this jail. It's so fucking horrible at the time, right? Like, and everyone like, oh, Canada's fucking a great country. It's not that great. We abuse natives with residential schools, and we've done some really horrible things in our history. And speaking about jail, my buddy at work was saying that like it's like he's like talking about how rape like now in prison, and I was like, rape definitely still happens. But he was saying now the thing they do is they like, I don't know why, but he was saying that he was looking at they're talking about this on this video or watching it, and they spit in guys' assholes now. So then there's men's DNA in the asshole. So then when they get tested, it still looks like he got raped. So when he has to call his family and to say like, well, they found DNA in me, and I was like, how does that work? I was like, they're still horny, they'll still rape each other. He's like, no, I was watching this thing, and they're like they bend you over, like, I'm gonna spit in your asshole, and I'm like, it's just, I was like, this is where this is going. They're
So
so bored.
that don't even make sense because it's like, all right,
I know,
okay,
as I said.
so to like not rape them, I'm still gonna bend you over, spread your ass cheeks, and spit into your asshole.
Yeah, and I was like, how does that make sense? I was like, he's like, yeah, they probably still rape. He's like, it's a new thing they're doing. So then it still looks like you have man's DNA in you. And I'm like, it doesn't make sense. And he's like, I don't know. This video I was watching. He's like, supposedly it's happening in the fucking jails in Arkansas. And I was like, of course it's Arkansas.
And look, I know it's fine for me to be sitting here, and I only have first world problems, but
Yeah.
I can't help but think that, if I ever ended up in a situation where I ended up in fucking jail, motherfuckers are gonna have to chop me up into pieces before I will
Yes.
give in to being bent over and have someone spit in my asshole.
I'll fucking eat shards of glass and then I'll shit it
Like,
out.
yeah, like
You
there
won't
is
want to go
no
down there.
way. And I always, but I can't remember what the show was, and I think it was on Netflix or somewhere. And this dude from the UK was traveling around to all these like horrible
Yes.
prisons
Worst
around the
prisons
world.
or something like that. I remember
Yeah,
that show. Yeah.
and there's one I can't remember where it is. I want to say it's somewhere in Africa, maybe. And like they put him in this place, and it's just like it's fucking scary, man. And like the dudes are all like testing him about like basically about fucking him, and
Oh,
like
really? I didn't see
like
that.
kind of kind of doing this whole thing of like, well, when you come in here, like you have to be somebody's girlfriend and all
Fun.
this
Hold
stuff.
my
Like,
pocket.
yeah, I think to just like see what his reaction was going to be. And I just often think, like if you were ever on a vacation somewhere and somehow were to get caught up in something and end up in one of those like really weird, like backwards shithole places.
Yes. Well, that's why I like shout out the Shadow People episode. Everyone go back and listen to that if you haven't. That's a great episode. But I talk about my experience in Cuba and how I saw Shadow People afterwards. But my buddy Mike, I thought he was gonna go into Cuban jail because as I was leaving, he was wasted, screaming "fuck Castro, fuck Cuba." I was like, great, he's gonna end up raped in a fucking Cuban jail cell.
Mm.
So there are rumors of unmarked graves in the property. Although only 3 official hangings supposedly took place on the grounds. Rumors about also of several unofficial hangings. So that obviously it's just not. I don't know why. Why would it be unofficial? It is it is the late 1800s. It's like, why do you care at the same time? Like they're doing really horrible things to indigenous people and stuff. It's like, why would
What-
you?
What's the
Make
difference between official and unofficial?
I know the guard's like, I don't really feel like filling out the fucking paperwork today.
Yeah, no, this is not official.
After the jail closed in 1972, a bridge was built alongside the jail and several bodies were found in unmarked graves. Pretty crazy because who knows? Things happen, right? People get obviously fucking murdered, like prisoners are murdering each other. But then you have the idea that some of the prison guards would be doing some horrendous shit. That is obviously happens all the time too. They help out prisoners and also they probably fuck with prisoners. And there's probably some for a Patreon episode. Maybe we'll talk about the extremely weird things that happen in jail because I can imagine when I start researching that stuff, there's probably some fucking strange things that really happen inside
And
jails.
funny when you mentioned that, that was something that popped into my mind when I was looking at this, and I done a little bit of research, and then I came across some other jails and some other weird shit that has gone on. And I was like, huh. I was like, there's probably actually a lot of really good stories here.
Yeah, like, and the thing is, like, I always find it interesting, just like the cesspools of life. And that's why I love true crime stuff like that. But personally, I went to jail right when I was a kid, right? Like I was in and out of youth jail, just doing stupid shit. Like it was like dumb stuff. Like I got arrested for stealing a bike, and then
Hmm.
it just went from there. I uttered a death threat. If a kid I thought I knew, he like knew my brother, and I was like, "Oh, if you tell anyone, I'll fucking kill you." And I was joking. I'm 13. I was or 13. I was 14 at the time. I was like, "I'm not gonna kill you. Like
Yeah.
I'm just stealing this bike." And the thing is, I never had intention to actually like take it and use it. I literally we were at the other end of town, so I rode it to back to the high school because we just started grade 9 and we went to the elementary school to see some of my homies that were like a year younger. And then I just rode the bike back to the high school. I didn't want to fucking walk all the way back, and then I left at the high school. And then the kid's like, "This kid uttered a death threat, and he fucking stole a bike." And I was also drunk, so it probably didn't help. I've had an interesting life, and then it just made it worse. My mom would call me cops on me for joints, stuff like that. And I've seen weird shit in prison, like or
Mm.
jail, like in holding cells. I got arrested in Oshawa for breaking my curfew, which like that. And Oshawa is like a big city near Toronto, and there was like gangs in there, and like this dude like he's like, "Yo, Niblets, the PO got us, the cops got us." He's like freaking out. A guy next to me is 17. I was like 50 at the time. He's crying about wanting to go see his baby. And I'm like, "Bro, you have a baby and you're 17." And then at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm just guessing is that time because you can't really tell what time it is. A chick started giving birth in the Okie said, "There's blood everywhere." And she's like, "PO, we need a cop." And I'm like, man, psychologically, this is not good for my brain at 15.
Do you know what? And I heard several times, and obviously I don't know how true it is, or if that's just something people say about if you had to be in either of those places, sometimes it's actually better to be in prison than it is to be in jail, because jail can be just like this weird like halfway house where everyone's absolutely
Yes.
fucking psychotic.
Mhm. Yeah, it's can be like youth jail. I went to like one place for a week and then I went back for like another week. It was just like youth, whereas in a house where there's like staff members, and
Mhm.
everything like that. And there was just weird kids, weird, and some of them were really funny. I got in a fight with this big native kid, and it actually gave me respect. Like, "Oh, I heard you battled Alex. That was pretty cool." It's just like, man, he pinched my nipple, and I got upset about it, and then, like we fought because I just got there, and he's joking around, grabbed my nipple, and I was like, and then it got up, we started swinging, and then it's just like the staff members are just like normal people just working there for a fucking job. So they're like, Jesus Christ, you got to deal with all these ingrates and stuff. Like it is. And it's a thing that like I learned my lesson as a teenager. And
Mhm.
I'm glad I never went to jail when I was in my 20s because that's when you get stabbed and raped, like especially around jails around here.
And without holding up the rest of the show, but do you think
Yeah.
that really quickly on the topic of that, do you think
Yeah.
sometimes that the framework that's built there is actually part of the problem? Like you said, you had a couple of these things. Everyone does stupid shit. I know I have quite a few stories about dumb shit where I was like very close to being like completely probably fucked for the rest of my life.
Yep.
And some people learn and kind of move on from that. But then there seems to be a lot of people that get caught in the net.
Yeah.
And then when
It's
you
a
hear
cloud.
about
It's a
their
wheel. Yeah.
yeah, like you hear about their life story then, and not to make excuses for them, but there's times like where I look at somebody's situation and go, huh, he had like no chance.
Well, and I just think the system's kind of built for that stuff too. Is like just to mention this quickly, you talk about jails in general too. Like it's like I think it's just built for that way. Look at the way we treat indigenous people, and there's a lot of dudes that were indigenous when I went to like jail and stuff like that. A lot of like there's all sorts of different people, but I just feel like the system is built for failure. Like there,
Yeah.
so like I returned the bike. You know what I mean? They strickened the death threat from my record when I first got arrested. And the kid I was with, he stole the bike, brought it to his house, stripped it, like took it all apart, was gonna sell it for parts or like make a new bike. I left my bike at the high school. I wasn't taking it. I technically didn't even really steal because you could just get it back. I wasn't like so when I went to court, I was a punk emo kid. I just dressed normally and they gave me a year probation.
Mm,
But with him, he dressed all nice and he got no time, like nothing. So and he was a worse kid from a worse environment and family and stuff like that than I was. And I was like, yeah, it's just, I think the system's fucked. And I
yeah.
think they just put people through this wheel and there's no real justice in certain cases. It's funny how, like, I always bring up, like, if I did half the shit that Trudeau did, I would be in jail probably for the rest of my life. But these people in power get away with it. And if you're a
That is
low
true.
man on the totem pole, it's like whatever, like fuck you, you'll spend the rest of your life in jail. There's strange things. Obviously, like so there might even be like still unmarked graves underneath the parking lot, which is so crazy. Like and then that's rife for hauntings, and we'll get into like different style of hauntings, obviously, like that. Because you have like I always talk about residual hauntings, which are just imprints in time, where something so traumatic happens that it's imprinted in time, where it's almost like an overlay of reality, but there's not actually, it's not a spirit walking around consciously there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I always find as well, with these things, and we'll see it again later in another one of the cases we're going to talk about, but
Yeah.
establishments like this, and I don't know whether it feeds into what you said about like just the entire framework being fucked, but like a lot of these places end up having these like weird paranormal things surrounding them, and I
Yeah.
think that
The trauma too.
yeah, like, and even if it's yeah, I like it hasn't been proven either way, but even let's say if it's not paranormal, um I don't think you can have a place where some of that like absolutely insane shit goes on that's not going to be eerie and fucking weird and creepy and like have
Yeah.
stories. Like, I mean, like you said, I'm sure if we really were to research it, I can imagine there's some really, really unbelievably bizarre and scary things that go on in jails and hospitals
Yes.
and places. And I think that that's some of the basis for it, obviously. Um, but yeah, it's just interesting to see that like all these different facilities, and no matter where they are in the world, they all kind of have
Yeah.
a similar story.
Yeah, and it's, I think, people maybe 40 years from now will look back, 40 years from now we'll look back at where we are now and be like, well, there's this strange case that happened of this guy, and it's just like, and it's just permanent, like it's just in history, right? It's like permanent. um so after the jail was closed in 1972, it was converted into a youth hostel, which is fucked, which remains to this day. The top floor was the former death row and has been restored to its original condition and is available for tours. I would actually love to go here eventually. I just hate Ottawa. In fact, the jail has been partially converted, and guests of the hostel can spend a night in the jail. I would 100% do it. The jail's gallows are still intact and can be viewed, which is also awesome. I think that's fucking dope. So I would stay. Juan's like, fuck that. Like, because we're talking about hauntings in Florida, and he's like, we could go see some of these places. I was like, bring out the Ouija board. He's like, no, no, no. And I'm like,
I
I'm the
would
type of
love
person,
that.
I don't give a fuck, right? Like that I messed around with the Ouija board and the paranormal for so long. I probably had ghosts attached to me. The Ouija board told me at one point that I had like 9 ghosts attached to me, some good, some bad. And if you do like research and that, like David like talks about, they can attach themselves to like your chakra points, and
Hmm.
they like feed off of you and stuff like that, your emotions and everything. And I think you could be able to shake them off at some point and get cleansed. Who knows? I probably have tons of ghosts attached to me, but it's just, I just am fueled by that whole thing of, I like being scared, but almost in my own control. That's not like I'm jumping off a building from with a bungee jump, which it could snap. It's just like, I don't think a ghost is gonna kill me. This is not like a fucking 1987 fucking horror movie where the ghost
Hmm.
is like attacking me and like causing all sorts of traumatic events and like crashing my car. Like, I just think they could probably fuck with your life to an extent, but I
Yeah,
would I would stay in the jail 100%.
so would I 100%. I you know the way it says like you can see the gallows still and you can view that
Oh
stuff
yeah,
and
it'd be
you can
so
take the tours,
creepy.
right? And like I am like you. I think that's like I'm like, yeah, sign me up, sign me up. And it kind of not the same thing, but maybe 2 3 years ago, I say I don't know why. Like I do know why, because to me it looked badass. But I was somewhere and I seen a T-shirt that had this really cool graphic on the front of it, and then a picture of Richard Ramirez in handcuffs in court with
That's
that
cool.
creepy ass smile.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So that's exactly what I thought. Right, I just thought kind of harmless, like, oh, that just like looks. It's a badass, like it's a historic image, if you ask me.
Yeah.
That shot, that black and white shot of him in the courthouse with that like creepy ass
That, yeah,
smile.
he just doesn't give a fuck. And Billy loved him because he had no remorse.
Yeah, and like I'm while I don't condone anything he done because he was fucking psycho,
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by him as like because he seems like he doesn't even seem like a real person at times. It's like he's like
I
some
know,
sort
and
of
it's,
character.
I have an Ed Gein shirt, I have a Richard Ramirez shirt, and my girlfriend's like, and I guess now she's my fiance. She's like, why do you need to wear that? Like, it's just like, she's like, you're like representing these fucking evil people. And I'm like, no, I find it interesting. It just shows I'm into true crime. I was like, just because I'm wearing a fucking psychopathic murderer on my t-shirt doesn't mean that I am. Wink, wink.
And that's I
Um,
like the point I was going to make was I got so much shit from
it's so
people for
stupid.
wearing that, and I was like, it's just a t-shirt. And like I actually had people like super aggressive about it, and I was even getting DMs on social media and stuff, being like, "You fucking piece of shit," and all. I hope this, and I hope
What?
that. Yeah, like crazy shit, like, oh, like your kids die, you know. I'm like, whoa,
I would
I
love
don't.
for someone to come at me with that shit. Like, I'm the type of person that didn't wear a mask during the fucking whole thing. I got called a scumbag and shit. Then one time my girlfriend had to fucking be like, "Can you go outside?" And I was like, "No, I'm gonna confront that guy." She's like, "No, go to the car." And I'm like, "All right, like, I guess I gotta go." I think I walked in the wrong way where the arrows were going. The guy's like scumbag while he's getting fucking literally like 10 boxes of KD. And I was like, I'm the scumbag. Look at what the fuck you're eating every day,
Mm,
man. Fat piece of shit. So prior to the renovations, the Ottawa City Jail was hell for prisoners. Many died there and decided maybe to stick around for their ghoulish afterlife. Supposedly, there's echoing sounds of screams that come through the hallways. There's also many reports of apparitions, including a figure holding a Bible at the foot of beds and another who strolls the hall, whispering in the ears of guests. Which is a many, like, if you've heard of Ghost Adventures, which is like, I'm Zach Bagans, I'm a fucking retard. But like, it's just all these shows, right? There's a lot of phenomenon, right, where it's a little whisper in the ear. Like, it's
mhm,
slight little things where I have watched Ghost Adventures where I do think like they've said that production assistants will throw things and make the show more dramatic, but they have caught some really cool shit like demon like growling on camera. The
mhm,
ghost, I have a ghost box. I haven't used it in time, but I would love to revisit that. We have talks about doing some stuff for the Patreon, like going out to haunted locations, especially when the border stuff ends. Me and Anton have talks to do stuff like that. Me and Billy want to go out to some haunted walks eventually and record it and film it. It'd be a lot of fun because I love that shit. And I want to get back into that. Want to get back into that, me getting more into the paranormal. And I talk about it all the time, but I want to start doing stuff. Going to, when we were kids, we used to break into factories and play Ouija
mhm.
board all the time and do stuff like that where it's like I'm too old to be breaking into fucking ball bearing factories where somebody died at, but you know.
I mean, it makes for good content.
I know. It's like the first time we broke in this quickly broke in this ball bearing factory, and we broke in this numerous times. The first time we did, we found this old ass fire extinguisher. We're like, oh, awesome. And then it's just like we lit it off. I didn't know what it was gonna do, and it covered the entire area, and there was like residential houses right next to it, and it just went everywhere. Oh, here's a guy like fucking probably it sounded like really far away. He's like, what the fuck? And he's like, because it just went everywhere, this white cloud. And so we had to book it out of there. And luckily, my one friend saved me because I had big baggy pants on and I went upside down on a fence, trying to hop it, and I got caught. And everyone else left me but my one friend. And it's like, fucking dick.
That's a lifelong friend.
I know. So let's talk about the Skeleton Park. The Grizzly nickname stems from a rather dark and macabre history. The park that today hosts a playground, a wading pool, and a basketball courts once was a massive cemetery with over 10,000 graves. That is a lot of graves. It's a lot of dead bodies. Are you
Again,
a are you a
it's
grave or a cremation guy? What are you gonna do when you're dead?
um, I probably would have always said grave just because it
Yeah.
seemed like the done thing, but I think that just fucking burn me. Whatever.
Yeah. I'm getting that point. I always joke about like, if I was better shape, throw me out of a plane in a Superman costume. People are like, oh shit, there's Superman, and then he dies. Or I love the idea of having a Viking death. Put me on a fucking boat, launch me off, and fire arrows at me until I fucking light on fire.
When you think about it, like the idea of cremation is not too far from some of that stuff when you think about it.
I
Like,
know. It's just like the same shit. Like, let me just do what I want. Like, I've joked about being mummified. Like, I was like, wrap me, like take out all the shit from my brain and do all the things you need to do. Wrap me up and just like kick me in a hole and see if somebody find me eventually. So this is established in 1814. It was one of the city's first and largest graveyards, which is pretty crazy. And in 1864, the cemetery was closed and left kind of more derelict. It was like it's just kind of was fucked. Like there's like was fuck it. Like this thing is getting worn out. Obviously, people probably went in there, kicked over graves, and did horrible things, right? To desecrate the graves. So over the next 30 years, reports of skeleton remains surfacing the park and complaints of horrifying stench forced the city to eventually clean up the mess. So I don't know how maybe the ground eroded or something like that. And so the skeleton started almost like I think maybe they didn't even bury him deep enough where they started going towards the surface, which is pretty fucked up.
and like the fact that they decided, okay, right, it's gotten to the point now where like this fucking waste, this human waste is coming up from the ground.
Oh, it
Let's
smells
clean
so
this
bad.
all up and let's turn this into a playground with basketball courts and stuff.
See, yeah, I don't understand their logic on that because the graves desecration and robbery were also rampant at this point in history, as medical students attending the Queen's University were provided to provide their own cadavers for exams. So that's fucking crazy. I've always heard of this, right? I've talked about this many times on the podcast. Where like back in the day, like college students at the time,
Mhm.
then when you're first going to college, and especially you're young back then, you might be 17 going to college, 18, because you might just went right out of high school and you might have graduated high school when you were 15, 16 back then. So, and then you go to college and you want to be a medical professional, whatever, and then you go and then you need to work on cadavers and bodies for experiments to just to do the things that they were attempting to learn how to do back then. And then you have to go find your own fucking dead body. So there was constantly grave robbers, especially medical students, that would go dig up graves. And then the fact they're like, you have to get your own cadaver, we can't supply it, so figure it out.
That's also so fucked. Like, if you
It's like,
actually
what?
think that, like, if you think about that for a second, like, I'm thinking, okay, for a start, it shouldn't even be like that, that you have to provide your own cadaver. But okay, let's say you do. I would be taking a second look at anybody who actually shows up with a fucking body. I'd be like,
Yeah.
motherfucker, where did you get this?
It's just
Like,
like
it just seems a strange
you're
thing
an
to do.
Edmund Kemper and you really hate your mother and you're like, "It just looks like your mom." It's like, "No, no, Dorothy looks different." So headstones were bulldozed and other bodies transferred to another cemetery, which is always crazy to me for the families who could afford it. So for the families that couldn't afford it, or maybe they're just dead and they like their families, are all dead or they're like moved or who knows, and they have no time to even worry about this. Half of them probably didn't even get the phone call. So otherwise, thousands of corpses were left now to be transferred, now transferred grounds. So human remains still discovered occasionally to this day, and what remains of the gravestones can be found in the grass if you look close enough, which is actually fairly creepy. I like that. There are several reports and witnesses accounts of supernatural incidences, including terrifying dreams, strange visions, ghostly mists, and even physical apparitions. And I've never seen anything like that. Other than the shadow people. Go back to that episode. That's like my big paranormal go-to because I saw something that scared the living shit out of me. Scarier than jail, in my opinion. And I felt like it was gonna suck my soul out of my body. So I've had a very scary experience with that. I play a lot of Ouija board, but like my mom, she had a friend named Terry. He hung himself in his garage and she was really worried about him. I think a week after he died, a week or two, she turned to turn off her light and he was standing there. Like, and she's like, it
Oh,
looked like him, like extremely real. And then she's like, he was saying, it's okay, I'm fine where I am, I'm in a better place. And then it's crazy. The same Ouija board that my grandma gave me originally, the first Ouija board I got, because I have three of them. My mom said when they were playing it, when they used a shot glass, they were using the Ouija board.
mhm.
I have a planchette and stuff now, and they were calling Terry and asking like, why did he kill himself? And then when they mentioned his parents, the shot glass flew across the room and fucking like just shattered because it was his dad was very like his parents were really, I think, forceful and you know strict and shit like that.
While that scares the shit out of me, at the same time, I can't help but be like super fascinated and intrigued and like want
I
to
know.
be in those situations to a degree.
I
Um,
want to see it. Like, supposedly, Chelsea, my fiance, her sister, scary as fuck. Even if it is a family member, so she turned and saw her grandpa looking like had his hands on the bed, looking at her like with his just like he was almost like on his knees or on the side of the bed, and he was just like had his face on the side of the bed, peering over at her, and I'm like,
I
oh
would
shit.
shit my
Even
pants
if it was my grandfather, I would shit myself.
if I looked up at the edge of my bed now and saw one of my grandparents who were alive do that, I
Yeah.
can't imagine. I'd be like, "Oh, what the fuck is going on?" Also, as well, like they're saying here about human remains are still discovered occasionally. Can you imagine bringing your kid to that playground and you're
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, yeah, go and play
So
little
feet
Billy or whatever," and then they come back with fucking bones.
going out with your dog, and it's like, where the fuck did you get that?
Like,
Dog brings back some fever.
who? I would love to know who signed off on going like, you know, what's a really good idea to put here where there was like 10,000 graves. Let's put
Yeah.
a kids playground.
There's also like the breed of like dreams and grandparents. You ever seen the movie Dead Silence? Just want to say this quickly. I haven't said this on the podcast yet. Dead Silence, right? The movie
Love it.
where the old man's puppeted. Very creepy movie. The first time I saw that movie, very impressed. Um, I had a fucking dream that I was talking to my grandfather and he seemed normal, and then I started to realize that he was like being puppeted and his jaw was being moved and stuff, and it scared the living
No.
shit out of me, man. I was
Yeah,
like, Grandpa, what the fuck? You're my first time, you're in my dream after you're dead, and this is what I see. And it like supposedly you see dead people in your dreams are supposed to be coming to say hello. So my grandpa's like, I know you're into horror and stuff like that here, but I scare the shit out of you.
that's a terrifying because I when you were explaining it there, I was having the vision of there's a scene in that movie where the character, the ventriloquist Mary Shaw,
Yes.
she, I think it's the young girl is in the funeral home,
Yeah.
when she's
Yes.
dead on the table or whatever, and she falls out of the coffin, and there's
Yeah.
like a lightning flash, and her mouth is all like fucked
Cracked
up.
open. Yeah.
Yeah, and looks like a puppet.
We started like that movie is pretty crazy. I love to do some cover on that because I think that film is super impressive. For the people who haven't seen it,
Yeah,
look it up. I think it's better than The Conjuring and shit like that. It scared the shit out of me when I first saw it. So let's get into the screaming tunnel. I feel like we've mentioned this way back in the beginning of the show, maybe, but it was something that worth diving back into. So this tunnel underneath the Canadian National Railway, originally the Grand Trunk Railway, was never actually a tunnel meant for human passage. Rather, it was created as a drainage tunnel, which conveniently explains why there is always a stream running through it. It reminds me of like kind of like it. You know what I mean? Like those
hmm
does it does remind me of it. It is that whole like where they venture into the sewer system. So coincidentally, it did provide the farmers a convenient way to move themselves and their animals safely to the opposite side of the tracks. This is the most famous, at least from an urban legend point of view, hauntings in Niagara region of Ontario. There are many different versions of this legend surrounding this haunting. A girl running from a house on fire and on fire herself before finally collapsing in the tunnel to die. A girl raped and burned to death in the tunnel to destroy the evidence. And finally, a father burning his daughter to death after finding out he lost custody of her. The most well known, sometimes, as the most well known story, sometimes incest is added to this tale to make it a little more dark and disturbing. Father's like, "You're taking my fucking sex doll away?" That's really bad.
I had seen some other because there's a lot of different variations of that story.
It's urban legend
I had
always
seen
is.
another one. It's set in the early 1900s. Schoolgirl was using that area as like a shortcut and
Uh,
was hit by something and killed. And the screams were said to be her dad who was running through the tunnel trying to save her, screaming.
that
There's another
actually is
story.
intense. That'd be a good movie. Like,
Yeah,
uh,
there's another story about a couple, apparently who lived on the other side of the tunnel who would like constantly had all these like, I guess, domestic abuse issues, and apparently the chick used to like run out into this tunnel at night and stuff and scream, and there was like this whole story of like, was she potentially screaming out of frustration? Was there something else going on, or was she trying to like, I guess, get the attention of people in the town or whatever?
uh, until she was
Um,
murdered.
Yeah, like
There's
it
so
was
many
interesting
stories. It's
actually
an
to see,
urban
yeah,
legend. It's an
yeah.
urban legend. I always have like layers to this shit. I when I was working in restaurants, we used to go into the freezer and scream when we were frustrated at like a busy rush. There's like two of us. There's too many tables. We would scream our fucking head off. And the one time, this guy James came out. He's like, "What's going on?" And like, and he freaked out. And I was like, I was like, "We're just getting out a little frustration." He's like, "I thought one of you got fucking stabbed by one of the kitchen knives." He's like, "The way you guys were screaming," and I'm like, "Well, you gotta get your frustration out sometimes."
Better do it there than out in the middle of the
Yeah.
restaurant.
I know. So there are ruins of a structure, possibly a farmhouse or a barn. I would love to go here one time. Eventually, Niagara is
Mm,
not too far. I do have family in Niagara, so I might attempt to go. Maybe even with my cousin that's there. So up the trail on the forest side of the tunnel, there does seem to be a sense of paranormal presence at both sides of the tunnel and the house. Only the foundation of the structure is left, but it shows no obvious signs of ever having been burnt at any point. I would love to bring the ghost box here. It would be pretty cool to see if you can catch anything. Legends say if you light a match in the middle of the tunnel, I would do this 100%. Midnight,
mhm.
preferably, of course. A girl will appear and scream and blowing out your candle. It's like just fucking reminds you very much of a horror movie. Another legend says if you make fun of the ghost or laugh at her, you will suffer a fatal car crash on your way home. What if you walk though? What if I walk there?
Yeah, then what do I get hit by a car?
Yeah. While we never had the match legend work, we certainly, supposedly, these people that wrote this out have had heard the girl screaming in the tunnel. As for the car accident, supposedly one of the team member of this paranormal group, supposedly once at the end of the tunnel when other people were making fun and laughing, did almost get in a severe car accident on the way home. They said they think it was no such thing as a coincidence, which I don't think there is a coincidence either. So I would get along with this guy. Very fucked. Who knows? I would love to do it. I'm not screwed. I would do it. I would go like the match. And I would make fun of the ghost. I'd be like,
Yeah,
fucking,
no problem.
I'd be like, I'm your daddy. It's
Yeah,
like,
and you know what? Like for a lot of people, they kind of see that as like, why would you mess with that stuff or whatever. But to me, that's like if someone tells me that, it's like, yeah, I'm definitely gonna try that.
well, that's like I was playing the Ouija board. My Jamaican aunt, she used to play it in Jamaica, and she wouldn't eat, drink water, or anything like that. She used to play it by herself, and she got obsessed with it. I did to an extent, but she's like, never play it by yourself. Came back from Oshawa, and I started playing it by myself. I would be drunk because I was a crazy, ridiculous teenager. I would get drunk and play the Ouija board,
Ooh,
which is fucking so stupid. And that's when I started telling me it was like a reptilian and stuff. I was like, is this my own brain or is this actually fucking work? Because I did feel it all the time. It would pull my hands. Like I just felt like it almost felt like a magnet being like pulling my hands. It was fucking weird, man. There's some Ouija boards are fucking weird.
yeah. I heard. There's actually somebody. I wouldn't be close to this person. I just know of them from our town that apparently took a shitload of shrooms and then done it. And
Oh
had
fuck.
this like really like wild like like 8-10 hour trip of like basically going psychotic.
Oh no, I want to get to that point kind of. I've only done like just seeing some shit. I've been getting mushrooms lately, and I want to get to that point where I'm like talking to aliens, like some fucking demonic
Same.
creatures. Not demonic creatures.
Same.
I'm not calling that out, but like I want to get to a point where I can be able to talk to like an entity or my higher self. Be like, "What's up, Thomas?" And like just talk to like who I am above all this bullshit. There's the
Yeah,
possibility too.
when I hear about all them different people, that do like DMT and all these different have these like wild trips, I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm so jealous of that.
I haven't had it yet because I've only gone up to like I think 3 grams. I've never done above that. Where it's just like yeah, I got really deep into it at one point. We'll get onto another episode, but like I want to get further along. Like my buddy Raz that was on the podcast way back in the day, he did DMT, and I was like, "Did you see entities?" And he's like, "Yeah, I saw some fucking beings," and he's like, "It was weird." So,
Mm.
screams, apparitions of both a girl with blonde hair and a woman with dark hair, both dressed in white, cold spots, mysterious mists, orbs, phantom footsteps, animals being unwilling to enter the tunnel. That's happens. A lot of weird, strange, paranormal things. Let's get into a little bit of a smaller one. The Prince of Wales Hotel. And this is on Niagara on the Lake, another place. Niagara is has tons of hauntings. It is an older city. There's a lot of historic buildings there. There's a lot of hauntings there. So the elegant walls of the Victorian era Prince of Wales Hotel in Niagara on the lake house one of the most tragic tales of places haunted in Ontario. This stately building erected back in 1864 was named after the Duke and Duchess of York who stayed at the hotel earlier in its existence. While the hotel has enjoyed obviously prosperity, tremendous prosperity over the years, even becoming one of the best hotels in Niagara on the Lake, which I've never even heard of this thing. So actually, the Prince of Wales, I think I've usually in town in Niagara. Niagara on the Lake's more for hoity-toity rich people that like drinking wine. Um, it is a history. It is veiled. It's supposedly its history is veiled in tragedy. Before the hotel was ever built, the property held a small wooden house, home to Molly McGuire. I guess McGuire. Like how I'm terrible, and the fans know this at pronouncing last names. It happens all the time. So I'm just because I'm stoned and drunk usually. Home to Molly McGuire. During an American invasion into Niagara, an American soldier mistook a figure in the house for a British soldier. He charged in the house, killing the person before realizing it was not a soldier, but it was Molly McGuire. It's like you should probably look. You know,
I tried to dig into that a little bit more because I was like, I mean, I guess yeah, but it's like so like I don't understand. You looked into the room and how could this person look like a British soldier?
just like a shadow, or it's just like, or he just didn't give a fuck. It's my
It's
problem.
like yeah,
Probably,
let's just
yeah.
kill her and like rape her or do something
It
mental.
could have happened. He's like, I'm
Mhm.
bored today. I haven't got laid for over a month. I've been fucking smelling stinky ass, sweaty buttholes all day. All the other soldiers and
I've been spitting in assholes all day.
since since then, the ghost of Molly has been known to mess with the pipes and the showers of the hotels. Some visitors say they hear voices whispering in the rooms with no one there, or footsteps running the hallways sound like creaking on the floor. So a lot of weird, strange hauntings. Um, this is the biggest case that we have on the docket. So let's get in to the Queen Street Mental Health Center. So let's talk about the history. So this asylum was first to be built in the province of Ontario, and it came from the ideals that the state needed to take a large part in care and housing the mentally ill. Previously to the great asylums, and mentally ill were taken care of at the home or thrown into the poorhouse or prison in both British North America, Canada, because at the time we were still owned by the Queen, which we still are. For everyone that doesn't know, when you get arrested, you go in front of the crown and the judge, and the crown is the Church of England. So Canada is still very much owned by the reptilian biatch.
And look, I think anybody from my country in Ireland can attest to being dominated by them. We spent 800 years getting the shit beaten out of us by the Queen. So
Yeah, it's true. I think she's a reptilian. Constructed on this institution was the construction on this institution. I would think construction of this institution, I would say, not on, began in 1846 on a 50-acre site. Impossible to imagine in the heavily built up area on Queen Street West today. Yes, it's like right downtown in Toronto. This is pretty crazy. Like this is like right in the heart of the city. The original building began to accept patients on January 26, 1850, despite parts of it still being under construction. And I'm pretty sure Queen Street is like the gay district now. It's where all the I was gonna
strange.
say all the homos hang out, but I can say that Anton's gay. Well, he's queer, but he's not full on gay. He still dates women and stuff like that. So love you, bro. But yeah, like we can say whatever we want. I've always joked that all we need is an Asian and a mentally handicapped person. And I was like, then we can say whatever we want. Because we've had Alex on, he's black. Billy's Mexican, even though he's the whitest Mexican I've ever seen in my fucking life. He's like full blown blonde hair, fucking whitest, skinny looking twink dude you've ever seen. And I don't know how he's Mexican, but for some reason he is.
So you get a free pass.
Yeah, kind of, so to speak. Like it's just
I,
like, well,
I don't know why, but for me, anytime I see certain keywords with mental hospitals, even to say mental hospital for me, I'm always like, oh, it's like creepy and eerie and weird. And like this place, I think went through several name changes as well.
yeah,
Some classic ones, Asylum for the Insane, which
great
already
name.
just sounds yeah, absolutely like fucking Toronto Lunatic Asylum. I think Lunatic Asylum is another one that kind of creeps me
Scary.
out.
Yeah.
And there was 999 Queen Street West.
That's and 666 is 999 upside down,
I don't know
right?
if
So,
this was a made up thing, but apparently when they constructed the building at first, it was built with a series of rigid lines and sharp angles, consistent with the belief at the time that orderly physical structure would facilitate orderly mental states for the patients.
so what they set up almost like a rat maze. It seems
Essentially,
right.
yeah, thinking that they could like, I
Help.
think maybe yeah, like force them into like routine patterns, and they would like
Huh.
learned behavior.
It sounds bad. When you think of a insane asylum, you just think of like those dude in the white gown, like they fucking throwing poop and shit, and like just like full blown crazy. Where it's just like they're like the rats, their best friend, almost like the Green Mile, and then the
And
rat dies, and the big black man heals it.
I have like really close ties in my family. Someone who's quite close to me, relation wise, is paranoid schizophrenic and spent years in a mental hospital here called St. Senan's.
Really?
Um, and to be honest, in my opinion, anyway, like I don't know why my family thought it was a good idea to bring me to visit him when I was a kid, but uh, those play like in my belief anyway, any place that I've been around that he was ever in just seems fucked. I don't see how if
It
somebody
helps.
is yeah, it's because it's fucking it is nearly exactly like what you see in a horror movie.
Yeah, and I know, and I can. I've known dudes that have been in halfway houses, like stuff like that. And the thing is, I also grew up with a friend that was schizophrenic. He was a lot older than me. I actually met him through like the St. Leonard's thing, which is in Canada, is a thing for like, oh, you got anger issues and you're a teenager, go here. It's like counseling shit.
Mm.
So I met him through there, and he's the one that taught me how to play Ouija board or use the Ouija board in general. When I was he was like, I think he was like 16 or 17. I was like fucking actually he was probably 15 at the time, and I was like 12 or 13. And he was like, yeah, you just get a piece of paper, you write down the letters and then things, you take a shot glass, and he showed me how to use it. And he used to walk by churches and hear screaming, and he thought that a ghost, actually talking about ghosts, he thought this ghost in his house. He would wake up with and seeing this guy over him choking him and stuff like that. And I always believed, and I still believe to this day, that he was just seeing some shit that I couldn't see, honestly.
It could very well be.
Like, tapped into some reality. They're born with the brain chemistry that's tapped into a different realm of reality. Who really knows? But that's just my belief. For any of our schizophrenic friends out there or fans. The, the belief was considered a modern marvel at the time, with indoor plumbing, wow, and mechanical heating system. In 1866 and 1870, the two wings on either side of the building were constructed, creating more rooms and for increasing patient population, because more and more people are going crazy. And at the time, if your wife went against the grain and said something to you, you could just claim her to be crazy. She'd be on her period. She's like, this woman is acting absolutely crazy. And then it's just like they come and fucking pick her up, put her in a straitjacket. That did happen a lot for people that don't realize.
And like that's fucking insane. Like, and I mean that's gonna create mentally unstable people.
Oh, 100%. So patients were expected to work at the asylum farm without any compensation as part of their treatment. It was supposed to be light labor, but as anyone who has worked on a farm, it was anything but. Farm work is extremely hard. As well, all the giant asylums, this one would become overcrowded, obviously overstaffed, understaffed, not overstaffed, overcrowded, understaffed, and underfunded, and the treatment of the patients began to decline. Of course, this happens at a lot of places. By the 1920s, the morals and the kindness and humane treatment turned into a pipe dreams. And you see that this happens in hauntings all the time, where it's there's tons of these asylums like this in the states where they don't care anymore about the inmates and stuff like that, or the
Mhm.
outpatients and stuff, and they just like let them, where they like put them in the room. And a lot of times these people were just like autistic people with Down syndrome, and they didn't know how to deal with them. So they just stuck them in a room. And there's that Geraldo Avera, I think that's his name. And he did that documentary where he goes into the asylum, and I think it's Geraldo Avera in the 70s, and it's fucking scary. And they use this creepy, like black and white looking camera.
That's on
And
YouTube, I think.
yes,
I
it
think
is.
you
And
can
it's
actually get it.
fucking
It's fucking
scary, man.
scary.
It is
Yeah,
the
I
freaky
watched
one
that
of the
yesterday.
freakiest videos, man.
That
It's like,
like that shit is like a real horror movie. I
yes,
only looked at a bit of that yesterday, and I was like, I have to turn this shit off. I was like, it's
I
just
know
like
it's there's like
fucking
fucking
weird.
three nurses working on one massive floor, like they can't handle everything. And they're not probably getting paid that much, so why would they care? It's just a job to them, and it's filthy. And yeah, if you guys look that up, it is it's like I think it's inside an insane asylum or something like that. I can't remember the name of it.
And even with this place, like I mean, it's like a lot of these mental hospitals, and um, you know, uh, there was so many reports of like deaths and mistreatment and
Yes,
involuntary drug treatments, electroshock therapy, prison-like conditions. And then
going
I had
crazy.
seen that the chief psychiatrist and clinical director of forensics, Samuel A. Malcolmson, was subject to a disciplinary hearing following word that he had been sexually abusing and fathered children with some of the young female patients. And
Of
I
course he
think
was.
before it even really got anywhere,
Yeah.
during this like preliminary disciplinary thing, he just resigned his position and was like, yeah, I'm out, I'm good, I don't need to take
I
this any
see.
further.
And this happened in residential schools with indigenous people in Canada. This happened a lot, I think, especially in asylums where doctors or maybe the guy that owned the asylum, because they would obviously have children housed there that supposedly have mental illness, and they would rape the kids and molest them, and it's pretty horrible. But that's what happened, and we eventually you have to shed light on the disturbing history of this world sometimes to make people realize how fucked up things really were and still are, you know?
Yeah, have you ever heard the name Jimmy Savile?
Oh, yes. We're gonna eventually dive into him.
I would
Um,
love to do something on him, but there's a classic example. I mean, he had penthouse rooms in fucking
yes.
Broadmoor prison, and like um all these kind of like what you're talking about, these, I guess, boarding
Halfway
schools for,
houses and stuff like
yeah,
that,
like these like
foster homes.
troubled young girls boarding schools, and he had like his own room
Yeah,
in.
it's gonna be a big topic. So if you would like to jump on, we could even somehow maybe do a swap cast, or you could put it on your show. We would do it
Hmm.
Strange Brew podcast style, and you could throw
Hmm.
it on your show too. And feel free if you want this one, I could also send it over to you,
Yeah,
whatever.
100%.
Just let me know. But yeah, that would be. I want to get into Jimmy Savile. I've said since the beginning of the podcast, I want to get more of the David Icke aspect of it too, where like the deeper shit connected to the Queen. It's like, oh, the Queen doesn't know. It's like, oh, she definitely fucking does. She
a
definitely knew he
hundred
was a
percent.
pedophile. She probably was
Yep.
helping and probably molesting those kids too. I don't trust the royal family. I think they're a bunch of lizard fucking pedophile creepers. So,
You're
but
not
yeah,
wrong.
it's fucked. So that would be yeah. And I want to. My buddy's like, oh, I watched like the first episode of the doc on Netflix. I'm like, they're not gonna really tell you the full on details. Look at the Jeffrey Epstein shit. They like just kind of sprinkle it a little bit, but never really talk about how deep it
Yeah.
actually does go.
Yeah.
It's fucked. So in the 1950s, with the creation of obviously antipsychotic drugs, the asylum began to focus on day programs with outpatients in effort to move its focus away from housing the mentally ill. The name of the institution was changed to the Queen Street Mental Health Center at this time. By the 1970s, demolition of the building was already begun. The large asylum were beginning to be seen as inadequate, with the focus moving on to group homes and outpatient clinics, obviously. In 2009, the old asylum building was completely torn down, despite advocates justifying bringing up concerns in saving historical buildings. There are no longer signs that it even existed. And obviously, it's downtown in Toronto, so it's it's like let's get rid of this thing.
Didn't they leave? Wasn't there at one point like a 16-foot wall built around that? Isn't some of that still there?
Yes, there's old like that's what Toronto is interesting is there's like skyscrapers and all these new buildings, but then you walk around certain parts of Toronto, there's old churches, old buildings, historical buildings. It is weird. Like Toronto's an interesting city because it's like massive infrastructure of skyscrapers and billionaires and rich people, and then you have like old school fucking buildings. And Toronto's a fucked city. Toronto is a very interesting fucked up city in my opinion. Like I have cousins, and I was like, I don't know why my cousin still lives there. I'm like, why? It's so expensive, man. I was like, I don't know how you even like this city. As a kid, I was like, I want to go to Toronto and be a famous rapper. And as I got older, I was like, I want to move farther out into the woods, like I'm fucking Ted Kaczynski.
I don't blame you for that. And you know what's crazy about this?
Yeah.
It's they refer to it as Cam H.
Yeah.
And this, I guess, mental health or addiction facility is still operational, I think, as of today. And they're still in the fucking news all the time.
Yeah.
So they have this system there apparently where, like, based on, I guess, your security level that they decide when you go in there. You can, like, you get like these different passes, so you can get a pass to, like, go out every morning, or you can get a pass to go out during the day and all this shit, right? There's two stories that I found just in very vague terms. There was a guy by the name of Thomas Brailsford who was admitted there after beheading his mother.
Holy fuck. He pulled the
He
Edmund Kemper. Did he fuck her head?
he somehow got a pass and went outside and got in a taxi cab, and that was the second time that he had escaped that year. There's another dude in, like, only in the last, like, maybe 5-10 years. Um, he had hacked someone up with a meat cleaver,
That's the
and
way you
he
gotta do
ended
it.
up
You gotta do that.
getting out of there, and he boarded a flight. I actually think, I want to say he was, like, I'm not sure if he was Chinese or Korean,
It's all the
and
same.
I was gonna say that, but um, he hacked someone up with a meat cleaver, and he had been admitted there to their program and this and that, and he managed to escape from the program, went to the airport, boarded a flight with fake ID, and flew out of the country, and hasn't been
Jesus
home.
Christ. It's crazy as things like that happen. And I love that fucking Dave Chappelle joke where he's like, he's like, you motherfuckers all look the same. It's like, I am Korean. Do I look Chinese to you? And he's like, yeah, motherfucker, you do. It's like, and he's like, according to us, all black people, according to cops, all black people look the same. I love Dave Chappelle.
I mean, look, he's not wrong either, is he? Another thing as well, actually, on the topic of people, like, escaping out of those programs and,
So
like,
crazy.
just them having, like, crazy fuck ups. Apparently, there was a report done a good few years ago, and that facility itself had more people that had, like, escaped out of the program and reoffended and done crazy shit than all the other mental health and facilities and hospitals in Toronto combined.
Yeah. It's so it is kind of crazy. Like, the people that escape and get out, and, like, obviously they have some sort of intelligence to be able to figure out how. Especially some of them, they don't want to be inside this, like, shit filled fucking poo poo throwing place where everyone's, like, mad and crazy. Especially if maybe if you even aren't crazy and you just got locked up for the
Mm.
stupidest things. So, like, something like you were labeled as crazy. You started talking about the lizard people that were fucking abducting you.
And about maybe a 45-minute drive from here, there's a city called Waterford, and
I have
they
a
have
Waterford too.
they so the St. Sennans place I referred to earlier. I'll send you some images, and I might actually post this on my Instagram as well, just so people can see it. It's like this really fucking scary looking, like, this huge bell tower and stuff. And it's a mental hospital, like, so it's really creepy looking. So they close this place down, and then they move all the people that are suffering with issues to Waterford, which is about 45 minutes to an hour away from here.
Yeah.
And now it's not like it wasn't a building that was made specifically for this. It's actually in the basement of an existing hospital, right? So
Yeah.
you have to go underground to get to this place.
Sounds like
And
American
it's
Horror Story
yeah,
season 2.
no, and it is, right, because this shithole has been in the news so many times. Apparently, the conditions. I actually know somebody who attempted to commit suicide, and they were caught by the police. And in situations like that, the police will just bring them there
To a
so
psych
they can
ward,
be
yeah.
so they can be assessed or whatever.
Fuck.
And somebody had to go down and get him out, and they said it was absolutely horrific. Like, there's stories of, like, people, like, young people, just, like, they basically bring you in, do your paperwork or whatever, and then fill you full of drugs, and you can just, like, piss and shit yourself and, like, vomit all over the place, and they just
They
kind of
couldn't
leave you there
care
because
less.
there's, like, two nurses, and it's
Yeah.
this big massive underground building, and they just kind of just
I
you
think
go in
that
that room
people
there.
don't realize how fucked up the healthcare system is. I
Yep.
really do think that people don't realize how fucked up it is, and how some nurses couldn't give a fucking shit. And my mom and my grandma were both nurses, and I don't fucking trust doctors and nurses, politicians, lawyers. Don't trust anybody. So let's get into the paranormal activity. There's obviously a lot of stigmatism attached to this asylum and a lot of asylums to begin with, like you've just mentioned. Parents literally threatened to send their children to 999 Queen Street if they didn't behave. This became such an issue that in his final years, the asylum's address was changed to 101 Queen Street. It's like, we gotta change this name. I'm gonna send you to 9999. The stigmatism carried on long after the asylum was torn down. The fact that the neighborhood around the hospital has degraded, and even they blame the asylum to such a degree that has been very difficult. Even getting a history of this building into the last few years. The last thing anyone wants. Expecting those interests in the paranormal is a bunch of ghost stories related to lunatics that are used to be locked up in the Queen Street Rest. This makes the findings and reports of paranormal activity difficult to say the least because people don't want to discuss it because it's degrading, the downtown area. And there's ghosts of the former staff and patients supposed to be seen wandering the halls of the asylum. Phantom screams heard coming out of the building. Shadows and apparitions were seen looking out of the windows of unused portions of this building. Phantom footsteps, doors, and windows opening and closing on their own, objects moving on their own, electrical issues, cold and warm spots, feeling uneasy, and not obviously, and when you're alone, feeling them being watched, which also do like electric phenomenon, objects moving, so
Mhm.
poltergeist activity. Uh, Apparitions of nurses and doctors in dated uniforms, apparitions of patients in hospital gowns wandering the area looking lost, disembodied voices and conversations, light anomalies, electric disturbances, time slips. That's pretty interesting. Some reports of the former asylum appearing at night, cold and warm spots, feeling uneasy, being watched, and being wanted. These are also rumors of old tunnel systems still under the site with few access points. These tunnels are said to possess large amounts of paranormal activity, but they're very old with no electricity and partially they're collapsed, with the deepest tunnels filling up with water from Lake Ontario. Stories say the worst of the patients were kept down in here in these small dark rooms. These rumors cannot be verified, but the fact that some of them come from former staff makes people wonder if this is actually true because it comes from staff members that are actually there. Needless to say, any entrance would be exceedingly dangerous, with the loss of life being a very real consequence to if you were to go down and try to venture down there. One thing I want to say is the time slip is really weird, and the fact that people, even after its demolition, claim to see the building still like it just appears at night. That's fucking. Imagine walking by, you live in the maybe you live in the area, you're just walking your dog, and then you're like, look to your side, you're like, I wasn't there before. Like, that's
Mhm.
strange. And time slips is weird. That's and the full on apparition of a building is fucking, that's strange to me. That's really weird.
Yeah, and I had seen reports of obviously like I don't know, there's people like to just bullshit as well for the sake of it, but I had people talking about is it do they call it record skips? Is it where
Yeah.
you like see an apparition or a ghost or whatever doing something that they had been doing in their
Yeah,
like
that's part of the residual hauntings, right? You have fucking, Janitor Bobby just fucking still sweeping up the floors.
yeah
It's
yeah
like an
yeah
imprint of his fucking him being there, which happens a lot. And asylums will definitely get back into because we could do literally a whole episode about haunted asylums because there's so many of them. And
and
there's
like
so
I don't know what it is about it, man, but
it's just
like
creepy.
yeah, like I'm so interested in like mental hospitals and asylums and things like that, but I'm also like shit scared of it as well for some reason. I don't really know why, but I always envision like you were saying earlier about the footage from that documentary. It's just so fucking
Yeah.
scary and
I
like
think if I was born in the late 1800s, I would be in a padded room right now. My buddies are up.
yeah.
I have friends that are like, even Billy will say this shit. We're like, you're gonna be locked up in a fucking straitjacket at some point. I'm like, yeah. Talk about the reptilians back then and the shit that I speak about and conspiracies and the way that it's become normalized. But back then, you start talking about that stuff. Even sometimes ghosts and apparitions. There was a very superstitious religious element to it. But sometimes that would get you fucking put in an insane asylum.
Yeah, and that's like, and I think that happened to way more people than I think is talked about. You know, a lot of times with those
Oh
stories, it's like, oh yeah, we just put the reason all this stuff happened is because we put all the fucking lunatics together, or you know, oh, the reason a jail is like this is because we put all these bad people in there. And while that may be true to a degree, like there was even a medical director who had said at the time that he believed up to 50% of the cases admitted to this place would have been treatable from home. Uh, but they had a half-built facility and it was so close. So a lot of the local officials, you know, had a meeting or whatever and agreed that it was just easier to drop any criminals,
yeah,
misfits, anyone they thought that was a bit like he's going to be a bit of a problem. You know what you do? Fuck him in
you don't
there.
have to deal with it. You
Yeah,
don't have to
and
deal with
that's kind of like
it.
what I was talking about here with with this place in Waterford. Like they're having so many issues with it now because it's kind of become the place for like they will just put anybody who. It seems to be more like so long as you don't kill yourself or do anything crazy, we'll
Mhm.
just leave you there. We'll just drug you up, throw you in a room, and it's all good.
It's so fucked up that they do that to people. And now we're getting into stuff with assisted suicide. A woman has been headlines in Ontario. It's Ontario. Thanks to Trudeau and the way his government and his regime, in my opinion, his styled Nazi regime is running this country. Some woman went and euthanized herself, and was legally supposed to be allowed to do it because she couldn't afford her house anymore, and the living conditions in her house, supposedly there's like I can't remember the full story, asbestos or something like that. She had issues with her lungs. Her house was degrading, and there was a lot of bad air quality issues. So they essentially allowed her to euthanize herself. Very fucked up. You're in this
It's
dancing this thin line, then you have in fucking Sweden the suicide pod. They're making out of fucking 3D printing. So
yeah,
strange.
yeah.
Fuck. But
Um,
I think if you choose when to come here, if that's the idea, you can choose when to leave. But it's just I don't think I'm not condoning anyone killing themselves. But if you really hate this fucking planet that much, I guess it's your choice. Like really, like go on to the next reality if that exists. Hopefully, I'm right. But
yeah, well, I think, and especially in situations like that, I think that if someone has gotten to that point, look, obviously, I know people it's circumstantial. People get to that point for different reasons. You know, some people are fucked with drug addictions, or some people have like severe mental illness and different things. But I think when when some of these people are faced with like I said, somebody's trying to jump off of a bridge, they get stopped by the police, and then you get brought to this place, which is basically reinforcing everything you've already felt about your existence. Now you're trapped in a building that you can't get. You haven't actually technically done anything wrong, only
no,
tried to fucking kill yourself, and you've been stopped from doing that. And now you have this like life sentence essentially.
yeah, you're like I'd rather just be fucking dead.
And the more you say that, and the more you try and escape and want to get out of there and act wild, the more they're like, "Oh, this is why you need to be in here. You're
Yeah, and
fucked."
you drug you up and everything like that. The planet's a horrible place, so people don't fucking realize. Like a lot of people go through, mental health issues is a real fucking thing. Back in the day, I used to be like, people can overcome it and stuff like that. But with the way the world's going and how expensive everything is, and the war that's coming or whatever, it's hard to be optimistic. It just
Hmm.
seems like the elites and everyone in power are literally trying to fuck everyday citizens in the ass every day. So it's just we live in a very strange time. Let's get into our last story. I'm running a little bit on a time limit because I gotta go get a haircut. This is one of my buddies, so I should be
Funny
good.
snap. I actually am going to get a haircut in 30 minutes as well.
Really?
Um,
That's hilarious. Me too. I'm going at one.
before we move on from that documentary you were talking about earlier, I think is called Children of Darkness.
Yes, man. I think
I
that's
think is the name of it. And
it's
there's
really
also
fucked.
there's another case that I would love to have either yourself or you guys or whatever way we want to do it.
Yeah.
There's a case something similar, but it's like when you hear about it, it's absolutely fucked. It's the Florida School for Boys. The I think it's the Arthur Dozier School for Boys. Fucking scary, man.
If you want, we could have me, you, and Juan do that because Juan is
Yeah.
from Florida. He probably
That
went to the school of boys and
well, well, dude, this shit is fucking scary.
all right, we'll definitely get into that. I'm excited. Actually, I'll talk to Juan about that. He'll probably be
Yeah,
so
yeah.
down. He's probably like, "Yeah, I went to the school of boys. I was molested by a priest." So Let's talk about the Mackenzie house. Get off the asylums. The asylums are creeping me out. The former home of Toronto's first mayor, William Lyon Mackenzie, is a must-visit for ghost hunters in Ontario. The former rebel leader moved to the residence in 1859, but he did not have long to enjoy it. This historical figure passed away just 2 years later, leaving behind a wife and 14 children. Holy fuck, man. This guy got fucking down, dude.
Busy.
Holy shit. 14 fucking kids? You'd have to be rich to be able to deal with that shit, unless you're like East Indian instead, like where you just like stack them on top of the house. Bobby, you're living with I knew a buddy named Swamp Nail. So it's like, Swamp Nail, you're living with fucking grandma right now. You have to sleep on top of her because that's the only fucking room we have.
His fucking wife must have been a husk
Oh man, like
at that
after
point.
so many kids. Yeah, I know. Fucking, she's got a fucking wide gaped open hole. You shove your whole fucking head in there. Just get go spelunking or whatever. You put on that miner's hat and you just go see what's on the inside. So bad. The property remained quiet until the early 1940s when renovations began to convert the stately mansion into a museum. It was then the reports of ghostly apparitions with the appearance of a long-haired woman began to come out. There are no gentle specters. In fact, there's even reports of the ghost of the Mackenzie house slapping the caretaker in the fucking face. Like, you ain't cleaning properly.
What do they call that? So like I had seen all these different terms for I had seen record skips or whatever it is come up a
Yeah.
lot about, watching somebody do something they done when they were alive. Is there a term for, and I had seen it and I can't remember the one that I had seen, but when you they can actually interact with you and like hit you or hurt you physically. Is there a name for that?
I feel like that's technically a poltergeist. Because poltergeists have the ability to move objects. They're like, we're seeing a ghost is like just one thing, but if they can move objects, physically hurt you, cause electrical disturbances, I'm pretty sure that's like more of a poltergeist. I feel like there is maybe a word, more descriptive word for it, but
Mhm.
I've never dealt with that. I've talked to, I had when I was a kid, I went to like a psychiatrist. I was going in jail. So fuck it. I don't give a shit about talking about this. I was a teen. I didn't want to go. It was just like my mom was like, you gotta go see someone. You've been through a lot of
Mhm.
fucking traumatic events, type of shit. And this guy, he was really cool. He's dead now. He died of cancer, but he would like I would show him hip hop albums like Immoral Technique, and he fucking bought the album and then listened to it and was like, oh yeah, I get what you're talking about. And it's very about the government and what's going on. He was very cool like that, where he told me stories about how he used to use the Ouija board in his apartment in Toronto, and they started like, and they you supposedly used a Ouija board that was super like one of these electric ones almost that was super thick, and the thing moved all by itself. And supposedly he had doors shutting and closing and cupboards closing, and I've never had experience like that, or even talked to anybody that has had
That would be
experiences that crazy
wild.
other than him. Fucking crazy. So, but this ghostly woman isn't the only one haunting in this house. There are many reports of a bald man in a frock coat having reported over the decades. Many believe this is William Mackenzie himself walking the halls of the house of which he died. Another specter figure of a dark figure towers above sleeping guests at the hotel. Creepy. Guests can often hear footsteps creaking through the halls or piano music playing at various times of the day. Just your average haunting, creepy shit. I'd actually love to stay there. Some of these places, I'm gonna see if I can, even if it's down the road and we're really pumping up Patreon content and getting some videos out there, I do want to attempt to like visit some of these places or do ghost haunting, like walks, even ghost walks. I have some in Hamilton, which is a city very close to Toronto. It's not far from me either. There's a lot of stuff that's pretty thick in
Yeah, because
ghostly.
there's so many places, like, I know sometimes people think like, oh, all that stuff is oversaturated. But when you actually go looking, like, yeah, we've all heard of maybe the top, 10 or 20 cases that have been on like Ghost Adventures
Yeah,
and all that shit. But outside of that, like, there's literally tens,
everywhere.
thousands of cases that are
There,
like way
yeah.
more interesting as well.
There's this place called Stony Creek. It is about probably 45 minutes where I'm at. And there's a haunting place there. There's two places. So around the same area, there is a war hospital where soldiers used to go to get their wounds bandaged up during this more or less Civil War in Canada, but that wasn't really much. We were just helping fighting and stuff like that. But around that time era. And you're supposed to be there's a ghost hauntings there, and then there's a house not far down the street. I've never went, but I knew friends that went there, and when they were kids too, like younger, and their parents took them there. And so the one was too scared to go inside. I think that was this kid Connor, and there's Connor and Cameron. And Cameron went inside with the mom to listen to the ghost stories. You can't go upstairs in this house. Supposedly, this little girl was sick, and the grandma took care of her, and she had like typhoid or some fucked up disease back then, or who knows? The
Mhm.
one where you poop yourself a lot. What's that one? The cholera. So who knows? Some one of those fucked up diseases that we've got rid of by washing our hands. And so supposedly the dad and the younger son were sitting on top of the hill, and as the ghost story is being told, in the window, it was like a window, but it like split in the center. And
Mhm.
supposedly they saw a full-on apparition of an old lady walk by and then convert into like a little girl. I was like, man, and they told me I was like a teenager, probably when I was 12, 13. I was like, oh man, I want to go. I want to see this fucking thing. They're
Yeah,
so, so creepy.
and I'm when I say that stuff, I think sometimes people, because and it happens on my show as well. People think that I'm being like, this stuff doesn't scare me or creep me out. Oh no, I'm shit scared of a lot of this
Yeah.
stuff, but I still want to go and like put
It gives
myself
me
in.
some sort of adrenaline rush. It is and I love that feel. That's why you gotta mess around with Ouija boards. And me and my friends used to talk about this when we were teenagers. That like it is being scared, but you're able to manage it. Where it's just like you're not gonna die, but
Mhm.
you get that fight or flight adrenaline pumping through your veins. And I really do enjoy being scared. It's been a long time since I've been really scared of even a movie or anything like that. But
Yeah,
I love getting excited getting into some of these cases. If I'm researching late at night, stuff like that, it tends to like where I get feelings of it. Like, um, I'd like to mess around with mushrooms with stuff like that. I don't know how well that would go. Probably be a bad idea. But like fucking go to haunted places on mushrooms or like play the Ouija board on mushrooms, I probably start
mm,
tripping myself out really bad. Like, I start to see entities and stuff like that. But who knows? Maybe I'll do it and record myself, and then I'll fucking start like floating and shit and being possessed.
that needs to be like a $50 Patreon tier.
I know. We've joked about all these fans want Billy to do mushrooms because Billy did mushrooms once. His brother and him split it, and then his brother had just a little bit of tea. His brother came back and was like, "Where's the rest of my mushrooms?" Billy's like, "What do you mean the rest?" He's like, "I fucking ate it all," and he's like, "What?" He's like, "You ate like fucking 4.5, 5 grams," and Billy's like, "No, I didn't." He's like, "Yeah, you did," and he had a really, really, really bad trip. And he's only done it once. I'm like, bro, you got to do it. Like, and there's fans wanting us to do a live show on mushrooms. I'm like, come on, a gram and
Oh,
a
that would
half,
be
a gram.
so good.
It would be hilarious because you're just getting the stupidest, craziest conversation. Actually, Billy not really trying them, and I've been doing more often. I'm like, you have to fucking do it. You gotta like jump on. We gotta fucking do this shit. I really enjoyed this. I
Yeah, this
definitely
is
want to
fun.
work together more going forward. You'll hear Aaron on more. I think we're gonna do a lot of more swap casts between our shows. I think it's a great idea. I definitely want to have you on some for the Patreon episodes, like the Unreal reviews. So you guys know where to find that. We're just building out the Patreon content a lot right now. We're trying to put out stuff, like trying to put at least 2 or 3 different style things. We have strange streams, us playing horror games, me smashing my mic in my face, stuff like that, being super scared of games. Evil Dead came out to fucking day, so I'm gonna be streaming that on Twitch. I'm really fucking excited. I can't wait to play that game. So I'll be streaming that on Twitch at Strange Brew TTV, but patreon.com/Strange Brew Podcast, www.strangebrewpodcast.com. Shout out all your stuff, homeboy.
I'm probably most active. Like I'm on all social media under First Class
Instagram, yeah.
Horror, but Instagram is probably where I'm
Yeah,
most active.
me too.
Yeah, so if you want to interact with me, I would probably go through Instagram. Other than that, I have a YouTube channel which I haven't really been. I've kind of been neglecting the last while because I'm trying to work on behind the scenes, sorting out video content and stuff for Patreon. I'm going to make a
Yep.
big push on that for the rest of this year.
Fuck yeah.
And yeah, podcast, Class Horrorcast, anywhere you get your podcasts. It's a weekly show where I interview anybody and everybody that has an interest in horror, anything strange, creepy,
That's fuck yeah.
directors, writers, uh, critics, fans, anybody basically I can get in touch with. Um, yeah, and anyone who likes that stuff, I'm trying to do more of um branch out a bit more. Like
Yeah.
like we talked about before, I enjoy true crime, I enjoy paranormal, I enjoy all that kind of stuff. So I do kind of want to branch out and start doing more stuff.
Yeah, check out his show because me and Anton plans to come back on. We said
Yeah,
anytime he needs us on and need to talk about specific topics, especially ones that we're more versed at doing the show that we do, that we'll be working together a lot. Me and shout out probably the time this gets released. At least subscribe and you'll see the episode come out on First Class Horror. But me and Anton came on and we got into a lot of stuff. We talked about literally everything from conspiracies
yep,
to cryptids to paranormal. It was a good time and a lot of information. Got to
a
know us a
lot,
little better, and it was
a
good. And
lot.
I'm excited to do some. We're excited going forward to work with some different people. And I think I don't like to branch out too much because I like consistency of people being on the podcast. But I want to introduce everyone to Aran because I want to have you more often because you can fill spots if Juan's busy, if Billy's not around, if it makes sense. You are very interested by this stuff. I do think that this is the starting a blossoming of a friendship. So, like,
100%.
so,
And if you
yeah,
do decide to bring back this part of your show again before one is ready to go again, I'm
yeah,
more than happy to do another episode.
maybe we'll do that. Maybe we'll show that, and we'll see. Well, maybe next time we'll talk about something even more fucked up. Well, Juan's on pause with his kid.
Mhm.
We're gonna call it something like First Class, and then instead of Strange Ones, I'm gonna think of a funny, kind
I
of
was
clever
trying to
name,
think of something before today, but I was
Strange
like,
Class. And I was like, no,
it's
let's
like
just
strange ones. I was like, that's perfect, and I was like, I can't up that.
Juan and Strange Juan. It is. We were joking about what we should call it, and I was like, strange. I was like, Juan, Strange One, Strange Wands, Strange Ones, and I was like, this works perfectly.
Before we go, actually, anyone who's listening to this who's from Ireland will already probably know this, but for anybody else, when you're saying strange ones there,
Yeah,
so obviously you mean like it's like somebody's name, but over
Juan,
here, yeah,
Juan.
but
Yeah,
over here, that
yeah.
that the way you're pronouncing that would mean a chick. So like somebody,
Really?
yeah, like let me see. Did you ever see that one from down the road?
That's hilarious.
And it's
Really,
it's WAN one.
and that's like a chick, like
Yeah,
a
like
slut, or like
yeah,
a
kind of like
like how I
you
said. There's
see,
a bitch down the street.
yeah, kind of like it would be like oh, did you see the tits on that one?
That's hilarious.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a Mexican name or Puerto Rican name. Juan. Juan Halavara. I can't even pronounce his last name. He'll probably be
because
mad at
it's
me.
that's spelled with a J, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Juan.
yeah.
Yeah, so we're definitely gonna have you back on. Yeah, we'll talk about maybe while Juan is away, we'll have you jump back on. Maybe we won't release it every other week. Maybe we'll do it like kind of a once a month thing till Juan's
Yeah.
back because it might be a little over a month. I want to give him his time to be able to get used to. He has a newborn kid. He's gonna be up late a lot of times. It's gonna be a lot of hectic things and him trying to keep
Mhm.
his show going and everything like that too. So yeah, like we appreciate all the fans. We love you guys and stay strange, fuckers.
Peace.
All right, hit that. Yeah, thanks for watching Twitch, fuckers.